Hello and welcome to the CRM MVP podcast. I'm clearly not Gus Gonzalez. My name is Lisa Crosbie. I will be your guest host for this episode. Huge thank you to Gus for letting me drive this episode. What I'm going to talk about today is a different angle on what it's like to be an MVP. And my angle here is that I'm a relatively new MVP. I got my award in November 2019. I'm recording this in July 2020, so I'm about 9 months into the program. I have listened to this podcast a lot, and I found it incredibly helpful to hear Gus's advice and perspectives on things along the way, especially last year in 2019 in the lead up to when I was really trying to get that MVP award. So what I'd like to do sort of in return here is offer a different perspective on the MVP program, because Gus's story, he's been in the program for about 8 years, and the way he got into it, very, very different from my story. And there are many different kinds of MVPs. There are many different ways to get into the program. And so I hope that in me going through my experience as a new MVP and my story of how I got into the program and my perspective on advice for those of you who might want to become an MVP will be helpful in offering a different perspective on that. So by way of introduction, as I said, my name is Lisa Crosbie. I live in Melbourne in Australia. I have only been in business applications formally for about 4 years, which is quite unusual. I actually did a big mid-career change. I worked in book publishing for a very long time. Now, I did actually always have my finger in the pie of the business systems back there, but I was never in an official IT role or project manager role or anything like that. I actually worked in sales and marketing management kind of roles and always put my hand up to be the one to help out with rolling out the CRM systems, which led to getting involved in Dynamics. The consultant we worked with at the time recommended it to us, so I started working with that in about 2015, I think it was. So I don't have a 20-year history with this product. I don't have a 20-year career in IT. So this is also an unusual thing, but I think the more we go along and the changes that we're seeing in the world and the career changes that are going to start happening for people, the Power Platform and the technology we're working with is really opening up this world of tech to what we call citizen developers and different people, and certainly opening up different ways of getting into the MVP program, which is very much my story here. I was also that business user, guilty of shadow IT, which I didn't even know was a thing then, guilty of using Excel, torturing Excel. I did things with macros that just really shouldn't have been allowed because I didn't have any other way to solve my business problems. So I come very much into a business applications career from the customer side, from the user side, as someone who had those frustrations and wanted to solve those problems. And so that's my perspective on where I'm coming from with all of this. So 2 things I wanted to talk to you about on this podcast. One of them is, what is the experience of being a new MVP? If you get that award, what is it like when you first start? And some of the things that I learnt in the first 6 months or so that really I had no idea about, despite listening to lots of things and doing my homework and so on. There were things that became apparent to me in the first 6 months that I just didn't even know from the outside. So I want to share some of those with you, because I think there's some things there that I would love to have told my past self that I hope will be useful for you. And then, as I said, the other thing is about how to become an MVP from a different perspective than Gus's story, because, as I said, my experience of this is really very different. So first up, the experience of being a new MVP. Admittedly, my first 9 months in the program have come at an exceptionally unusual time. I was super excited to have a ticket to go to the MVP Summit in Seattle in March 2020. Obviously, that didn't happen. So, some of the things here are certainly not typical of what the first 6 months or 9 months would normally be like, but others of them are. And I think one of the first feelings you have when you get the MVP award, of course, the first feeling is the excitement of it, that staggering kind of, I can't believe this is real. Pinch me, is this real? Lots of lovely, excited thank you messages and so on. But then the reality of the overwhelming nature of the thing kicks in. And as I see other new MVPs coming on board now, I've heard this from them as well. This is not a feeling unique to me, because the thing about getting an MVP award is that it's actually the start of something. It's not at all the achievement in itself, because you get a brief moment to enjoy that achievement, and by all means you should absolutely take that moment. But the reality is that it is a massive open door into a lot more work, a lot more contacts, a lot more opportunity. And the moment that you get the key to that door and you step in, it is overwhelming. You get added to a bunch of channels of communication. You suddenly find names that were famous to you, senior people at Microsoft, people who you considered to be famous in the community, in your inbox, in your, in a messaging system or wherever. Suddenly you've got all of this information coming at you. You've also got the conversation and consideration about, what am I going to do with this now? Where do I want to take this? Because as I said, the MVP award is really the start of something. And, within the first month, I was suddenly receiving hundreds of emails on things that were, not necessarily even things I knew about. I was being asked, what am I going to do with the award? Where would I like to go with it? And all of this hit as well. It was November. It was the last 2 months of the year. In Australia, that's sort of the wind up of our, we all have Christmas obviously in December, but that's also heading into our summer, heading into sort of end of year, school parties, all sorts of things. It's always a crazy time. I was traveling a lot. And I remember I was still doing all the things I was doing, but I really just distinctly remember actually saying, you get a local community program manager in each region. There's someone who is responsible for looking after the MVPs in that region as the sort of first point of contact. That person is your ally, is someone who can help take you further as an MVP. And I remember in the first conversation I had with her, I had so many ideas and I was so excited. And then I had to go back a couple of weeks later and say, I just need to breathe and take this in and actually think about what I want to do with it, because it's that feeling of overwhelm. I just couldn't kind of work out where I wanted to be. And 9 months down the track now, I feel much clearer about that and calmer about that, and actually back on to feeling genuinely never quite in control, but, on top of what this award program has brought to me and what I'm able to do with it. So my first sort of advice, I guess, is that if you do get the MVP award and you do become part of this program, you will feel overwhelmed at first. It is admittedly overwhelming. And I think on a recent episode that Gus recorded of this podcast, the episode 80 on why you should not become an MVP, he talks about, the feeling of imposter syndrome that some new MVPs have. I actually think it's not unreasonable to feel that for a little while. Like, you don't want to be going about the whole thing feeling like you're an imposter, because believe me, you do have to do the work to get in. But that moment of feeling like, well, hang on a second, I just got invited into a room with people who I think are famous, people who I have been following for years, people whose names I never imagined would be in my inbox, and I'm overwhelmed with all that stuff. I'm not someone who feels imposter syndrome much. I have felt it from time to time. It's not a big issue for me, but I have to say I did feel it in that moment. And I think that's just part of that thing of just figuring out, hey, I need to just survey this and look around the room and figure out, what is my place here? What am I going to do here now that they've let me in the door? I've talked a lot, I've used the word program a lot already in what I'm talking about here. And I think this is something that perhaps wasn't as clear to me once, before I got the award. We talk about it as an award. It's called an MVP award, and you do get a literal trophy, and that is lovely. But it's not like a certification. It's not like passing an exam or receiving an award and that's it. It is, as I said, it's almost like the key to the door. It's admission to a program. And that's only the beginning. The day that you get that award is really the start of something. It's absolutely not about saying, here's a badge, now nothing. Gus has talked a lot on this podcast about people who are one-time MVPs who never do anything. We all know that happens. But what it is an opportunity to become part of a program. And I think talking about the MVP program is probably a more useful and accurate way of thinking about it than talking about it as just an award, even though it is in fact an award and it's a lovely badge to have, but it really makes you part of something where the badge itself is just the beginning. So I'm often sort of, if I introduce myself in public sessions and things, one of the things is to figure out how to explain what the MVP award is. And one of the other things I hadn't fully been able to perhaps articulate before I got the award is, exactly what it is. And there are there's three words, I guess, and you can read this if you read any of the public documentation about what does it take to be an MVP. But just again, my understanding of this got fleshed out a lot in those first couple of months after I was awarded. It is a technical community leadership award. So those are the three keywords there: technical, community, and leadership. Technical in the sense that you have to be doing something technical. You have to be doing something with the tech. But I would also say that there are many ways to be technical with this platform. Technical does not mean that you have to be able to write code. It does not mean that you have to be the most technical person on the planet. It's actually not just a technical award. Technical is one part of it. And yes, you do have to prove that you have technical credentials, that you are doing something with that technology, and that you are working in a technical sense. So that's absolutely part of it. But that's not the only part of it. You won't get the award. It's not the award for the most technical. Technical is a part of it. The other parts of it, community and leadership. Community means it's not your day job. So you don't actually get the award for being the best solution architect or for being the best functional consultant or the best whatever. This is one that has surprised people. I've talked to probably a dozen people who've approached me since I got the award where they say, could you help me become an MVP, or what does it take to be an MVP? And probably about half of them are surprised when I say, you realize that nothing you do in your day job counts. And that's not something that people necessarily understand. You don't get the award for doing your day job. You get the award for being a contributor to the community around the product. And within the business applications community, that is a mixture of people who are consultants, customers, new people who might want to get into that space. It's a huge variety of people and different kinds of people all working on the product from different angles. And I'll come to this in a little bit about what that means is that you can bring your own experience, your own angle on that. There are many ways to become an MVP. There's not only one way to do it, because that community is broad, it's diverse, it's different people need different things. And so making a contribution to that community can come in many forms. So I will come back to that point a little bit later. So firstly, you got to be technical, but it's not the award for the most technical. Secondly, it's got to be community. It's not something you get as an award for doing your paid job, your day job well. And the third thing is about leadership. Now, you need to be providing some kind of leadership in the community, and that again comes in many forms. But this whole program has had me thinking differently about the notion of leadership. In my previous career, I was in a leadership role in a more traditional sense, in that I was a manager. I had a senior management job. I had a team of people reporting to me, and there is a big difference between management and leadership, right? I had a management job. Not all managers are leaders. Leadership is around this idea of, are you inspiring people to follow you? Are you doing something that makes people want to join you and come along with you? And so when we talk about leadership in the sense of the MVP award, it's that kind of leadership. You don't have to have, any staff reporting to you. You don't have to be in a management job or anything like that to be an MVP. It's about being a leader in the community. And a leader in the community comes in many forms. One of the most inspiring parts of the business applications community for me is this notion of we rise by others. See posted in the community a lot. And to me, that is the true definition of leadership, where you are enabling other people to succeed. Even if you look at Microsoft's, mission statement, it is about empowering other people to do more. It's about empowering everyone on the planet to do more. And so the spirit of that is what I think is being captured there. Are you empowering others by answering their questions, by educating them, by providing tools, by, organising conferences? Like there's lots of different, activities, but don't focus so much on the activity as the notion of what does it mean to be a leader? What does it mean to do something that brings other people up, that brings other people along, that gets other people involved, that empowers other people? So that's kind of where I place this whole thing, technical, community, and leadership. And you really have to be doing, all of those things. You have to be doing enough technical and enough community leadership. You won't get the award by just doing one of those things and not the other. If you are 100% technical, but you're not doing it in a way that is contributing to the community or providing leadership to the community anyway, good on you. Awesome work, but it's not going to get you an MVP award. Same on the other hand, if you're doing a lot of community leadership, you're organising user groups, you're doing all sorts of, other kinds of things, but there's no technical element to it. If you're just doing, I shouldn't say just, because it is a lot of work and it is very worthwhile, but if your focus is entirely on doing event management around those things without you actually making a technical contribution as well, you also won't get it. So you really need to have both of those things covered, probably in about equal measure to do that. So that's my sort of thoughts on, the experience of being a new MVP, about what the MVP award is. I think the other thing is that, there's a big difference. Probably 6 months in, I started to feel like I really found my feet with it in terms of going, yeah, actually, you know what, I do feel like I can find my place here, and I feel like I know what I want to do with this. But the amount of opportunity that gets laid at your feet, the amount of, just the amount of stuff that comes at you, there's an awful lot going on behind the scenes that you don't see until you get in that program. In many ways, it becomes even easier to contribute once you're in, because there are more opportunities to contribute. At some point, I'm going to learn how to say no to something, but so far, it's all just amazing stuff to be involved in, and it becomes, for me, incredibly personally rewarding to do the kinds of contributions that led to the award. So let me get onto that a little bit more, which is my perspective on how to become an MVP. Now, again, this is coming at it from a completely different angle than how Gus presents it, than how others in the community present it. And I'm being quite deliberate about pointing that out, because I want you to understand that if you're coming at this, there's not only one way in. And also that if your path is a bit different, that's okay. You don't compare yourself and try and mimic what somebody else has done, because it has to be your way in, and you have to be doing something that is valuable, that you can contribute. And I think if you've got your eye on the technology and you've got your eye on the direction of where those things are going, then playing along with the, look at where Microsoft is making those investments, look at the kinds of things that are coming in, and ride that wave and go with it. There are new ways to make contributions that didn't exist even 2 or 3 years ago. My first question to anyone who comes to me now and says, how do I become an MVP, is, why do you want to become an MVP? So I was listening to one of the other episodes of this podcast recently where Gus talks, he does episode 80, why you should not become an MVP. It's very much, in the same vein. I'm going to take the positive angle on this. Why do you want to become an MVP? First pragmatic reason to know the answer to that question is that if you do get nominated, you're going to have to answer that. So the nomination process now, when you get nominated, you have to fill out, all of your contributions. So first tip, make sure you're keeping track of your contributions, just a spreadsheet or something, the day to link to what you've done. Because, if you are aiming for that, you're going to have an awful lot of them, and it's going to make it a whole lot easier if you do get that nomination to have that there. That's also advice to my past self, because I did not have that, and I had to go through and kind of go back over my calendar and figure out all of the things I'd done. So yes, do keep a log of your contributions if this is an aspiration for you. But my point here about why do you want to become an MVP, as I said, it's a question you have to answer on the form pragmatically. So be ready for that. But also, it's a lot of work, right? So Gus's podcast recently on, you have to be unconvincible and you have to be, doing all of this stuff. It's so true. You need to be doing something that you love doing and that you would be doing anyway. And I know this gets said a lot, but really, you'll be doing MVP contributions, doing work in what would otherwise be spare time or free time or whatever. And to me, it's completely unsustainable and frankly, completely pointless. You've only got so many hours in the week. Do something you love. And if you're not doing something you love, it's not sustainable. You probably won't get there. Or if you do get there, you won't continue to be there. So, the why do you want to be an MVP needs to be about, for me, I have a passion for educating other people, for helping people understand technology. I, have come at it from the perspective of someone who's a career changer. I love doing presentations. I love doing education. I love seeing people grasp something and that makes that difference for them. There's that enablement. And to me, that would get me out of bed in the morning. I would be, I do that kind of thing because I love that kind of thing. And for me, becoming an MVP opens up more opportunities. And that's actually certainly been the case where I'm invited to, present or invited to educate or do those kinds of things in a way that I find, personally rewarding. I actually just want to do that because it is intrinsically motivating for me and rewarding for me, that I feel like I've actually done something worthwhile. But you need to think about your why. If what is your contribution? So there's a lot of stuff out there about different kinds of contributions, and I've heard Gus tell his story on this podcast about answering a lot of questions in online forums, and that's certainly one way to get there. Honestly, I've never done that. I'm on the online forums. I read the questions. I like to understand, what people are struggling with. But, every now and again, I think I should get on and answer some questions, but I just can't motivate myself to do that. It's just not me to be doing technical troubleshooting, answering people's questions. And I love listening to Gus talk about that, because you can hear the passion in his voice where he says, I just wanted to learn and I wanted to get everything and I wanted to learn all that stuff. And so I answered all these questions and I learned, and you can hear the positive for him. For me, I sit down and it's like, I still want to do it. Like it's just not my thing. Whereas if someone comes to me and says, would you like to present at our user group? Would you help educate this group of people who, we're organising a program for some people who want to learn about Power Apps? Would you make us a video on this? I can't help myself. I always say yes. So, because even though that's a lot of work, and then what I will often do is come up with a topic that I haven't even presented on before, and then use that as a way to learn something. So, I'll put in place or put up my hand and say, yeah, I'll talk on this topic that's new or that's interesting. And then as the date approaches, I'm thinking, what was I thinking? But for me, that's the motivating thing. I will stay up late, get up early, work on my spare time to learn a new thing in order to present it, in order to take what is, potentially inaccessible for people or complex for people and break it down in a way that means that they understand and can use that technology, and maybe that makes a difference for their jobs. So, I also love, give me an audience and a microphone and I'm there, right? This is me. I'm unashamedly extroverted. It's not the traditional path. When I first looked around at, a few people started suggesting perhaps I could be an MVP, and my first response is, well, no, that's not me, because particularly in Australia, for the longest serving MVPs here, they're mostly architects. They're mostly people who are very highly technical, very long-term experienced, and I have all the respect in the world for those people, but I didn't see myself in there. Even so far as my first presentations were at a local user group here in Melbourne, and for a long time, I'm certainly not afraid of public speaking, but for a long time I would go to those user groups, and when I was asked to present, I would say, it's not me. Like, you're doing very highly specific technical topics that are incredibly valuable, but that's not what I do. And then one day I just decided, you know what? Maybe there's also an audience here of other people like me who would benefit from hearing something different. And I did a sort of a short presentation there and a longer presentation there, and they kept inviting me back, and so I kept doing my thing. So, this thing of seeing, if you don't see your thing represented, or you don't see your angle on something in that MVP community, I would say, you do you, as my kids say to me a lot. You need to do the thing that is motivating for you, that is your valuable contribution to make. And we need a diversity of people in this program who are making different kinds of contributions. Answering forum questions is incredibly valuable, but it's not the only thing that's incredibly valuable. Running user groups is also incredibly valuable, as is speaking at them, and as is, participating in conferences and writing software. There are people who write incredible tools and provide them for free to other people. And again, that's not my thing. I have every but those people probably look at what I do and going out and doing public speaking at events and think, gosh, that's not my thing. So this is where we need, different things. And it's certainly very useful to grow your network, certainly with people who do the kinds of things you like to do. But I guess my experience here was that at first I looked at the MVP program and thought, that's not for me because I'm not like those people. And I was wrong. And I think there are more and more people who are different. And, as I said, as the technology of the Power Platform moves very much into citizen developer, into low-code technologies, then, the Microsoft MVPs are actually the first. It's like we are a group of trusted advisors to Microsoft. We are, you get a wonderful privileged position where you get invited to see features before they're released, to provide feedback on features before they're released. And, the more that we get into a low-code platform, we need people in the program who work in that kind of way, in that other kind of technical way, in order to be part of it. So as I said, follow the bouncing balls a bit in seeing where Microsoft is investing, because the value, as I see it, is that we can, they want people who represent those new parts of the platform, as well as the people who've worked with the technology that's existed for a long time. So I guess they're, my experience of coming into it from an angle that I hadn't really seen many people in my local community. And I think there are others now as well. Just in the last year or so, there are probably more people coming at it, perhaps more from my kind of angle. The other one that was interesting for me is that there's a lot of advice, and this is one point where I'm going to disagree with Gus on one point here. He did a podcast last year. It's episode 49, the top 10 mistakes that aspiring MVPs make. It's from March 2019. If you are interested in considering becoming an MVP, totally recommend you listen to that episode. At the time, I listened to it more than once, and there's certainly a lot of very, very good advice in there that I think is well worth your time listening to. There's one point in there, though, where he talks about the need to find a niche, and that if you don't find a niche, that's a mistake. This is actually pretty common advice given. Now, I don't want to say that it's not a mistake. I'm getting my negatives around the wrong way, because I think, we've seen a lot of people get themselves, very far and make a huge success by finding a niche. Find a new product, find an aspect of a product that no one else is talking about, go there and go deep into that and chart your journey. This is a path that is certainly has been very successful for many people. Certainly for me, actually, just on that, becoming a speaker at events, which was the thing that I most wanted to do early on, the uncharted territory was actually my way in. So if you are interested in getting a speaking spot at an event, my advice to you there, if you're not already, well known in a certain area, there's a couple of things there. The first thing is about networking with people. So mostly events will have some kind of selection committee, organising committee. It is certainly easier to get yourself on the agenda if the people who are selecting that have some idea who you are and what your work is. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to be everybody's best friend or schmoozing or whatever, but this is just a basic principle of networking. And this is something that I did go out of your way to introduce yourself to people who you want to work with, and join the conversation with them, join in with their conversation. Don't just kind of, and honestly, this has happened. I've had a number of people just completely approach me cold. Hi, Lisa, could you please nominate me to be an MVP? And I'm like, I have no idea who you are. Also, you're in a completely different country, in a completely different tech category. So no, that's not the way to go about it. But getting to know MVPs in your area, other people who can give you advice, because the other thing I've found about being an MVP now that I am inside that program, and I know a lot of them, is that, by nature, as I said, sort of near the start of this, MVPs are people who are community leaders. By nature, then, they're looking for other people to lift up. There is often, I know, MVPs don't actually have, MVPs can nominate, but they don't actually decide who gets into the program. So I just want to be really clear about that. There's a whole selection process, which is, not entirely transparent. You need to be making valuable contributions and so on. You get nominated either by a Microsoft full-time employee or by an MVP, but MVPs don't actually choose. They nominate, but they don't actually choose who gets the award, and they actually have no influence at all, in fact, over who gets the award. But they're like the start of the funnel of certainly looking around and then nominating people. But many MVPs are just actively looking for who's next, who else can we lift, who can we mentor, who can we encourage. You still have to be the one to do the work and certainly doing the networking, but it's not an exclusive club that excludes other people. It is a group of people who are genuinely, because they are these kinds of people, looking for who else is making a contribution, who else do we like. The language is very much about who else we want in the program, that we want to be part of. It gets called a family, that we want to be part of our group, because that I certainly felt extremely welcomed in when I got my award, and I've seen as other people have been given that award as well, that notion of kind of really being absolutely delighted for people who we can see have done the work and have made that contribution, getting that recognition, and then they become part of that in a circle with us is very much there. So don't at all feel like it's other or unreachable kind of group of people, because if you're doing something that is of a good contribution to the community, then the people who basically are leaders in the community you think about that notion of leadership. It's not about holding power, it's about enabling others, and I've seen many examples from the inside of MVPs actively searching out and mentoring others and searching out people to uplift, to become part of the program. So just bear that in mind. So to backtrack on my thought process here a little bit here, to the idea of speaking at events. So firstly, networking with people who are involved in organising events and networking with other MVPs and people who do the kind of thing you do. If you want to be a speaker, network with other speakers. If you want to be someone who's building tech solutions and toolkits and things, then network with those people. Get to know the people who do the kind of thing that is your kind of thing. But I found the way to get on the speaking circuit to start with was to talk about not necessarily the hottest new topic, but the thing that's, important but not popularly covered by other things. So, my classic example here was when the AI builder first came out. I am so fascinated by that technology. I love it. I dig deep into it. I do all sorts of things. But up until recently, I've never had an event speaker spot ever on AI Builder, because that came out, I think it was sort of first announced about June 2019. I might have my date slightly wrong. So, of course, the first thing that happens is that, people more famous than me in that area or more established than me in that area would also want to talk about that. So you imagine if you're an organizer of an event and you have 5 people wanting to speak on a certain topic, you're going to pick the person who's probably the most known or the most established in that area. And as a new person, as someone who is trying to establish yourself, you've got a better chance, and this is how I did it, by submitting. Firstly, I always submit multiple topics because then it makes it easier for them to choose you. But by submitting a topic that is something, for instance, I went quite well submitting topics on model-driven apps instead of Canvas apps. Everyone's talking about Canvas apps. Everyone's talking AI Builder. Did anyone else put in a topic on the CDS or model-driven apps? Probably not. Is that important? Yes. So from the perspective of a conference organizer where they're trying to get a good range of topics, offering things that fill those gaps is certainly a good way to get in. So that's sort of just that other advice if you are, struggling to get a spot, if that's your kind of thing, speaking with an event. And so I think that idea, this all started with my about to slightly disagree with Gus on the topic of finding a niche, because finding a niche is certainly an awesome way to go. Once you've established in that niche, you're good to go. I actually also thought, when it was first suggested to me that, perhaps I could be an MVP, my first thought, because this advice about finding a niche was so prevalent, I actually said to the person who was suggesting that he would nominate me, actually said, but I'm not a specialist. I don't have a specialty. I'm probably most visible around doing Power Apps training. But when I looked at my contributions, I am 50-50 straight down the line between Dynamics 365 and Power Apps. As I said, I'm probably far more visible for the stuff I've done with Power Apps, but I had actually done quite a lot of stuff with Dynamics 365 as well. And in fact, I would say my specialty is more in the breadth of the platform, is around how the pieces connect together. I am also incredibly motivated by learning new things all the time, by going, oh, right there, that's that bit. I want to learn about that. I'm not the most expert in any one thing, but I can probably talk about anything on the platform in some detail and how the pieces work together with each other. And again, I didn't really see that represented anywhere. I thought, I can't be an MVP because I don't have a niche. I don't have a specialty. Turns out that's not true. It's as I said, technical community leadership. As long as you're doing those things, you also need to be doing something of value and impact. I'll come to that in a second. But I'm going to just counterpoint, perhaps disagree, that having a niche is not the only way in, and it's not an absolute kind of mandatory necessity. By all means, it's very good advice to follow that path if you want to establish yourself in something. But if you're like me and you are more of a generalist, there is also still a way in without having to go down that path of a niche. For me, as I said earlier, it's all about what gets you out of bed in the morning, what's going to motivate you to keep going. And for me, playing with the shiny new toys and trying out the new things and seeing how they work with each other is more motivating for me than going very, very, very deep into a niche. But I know that, again, that probably makes me unusual. And I did say right at the top of this, I'm offering a different voice and a different perspective in this, in the hope that might be something that's useful for other people. All right, I think that's sort of most of what I wanted to cover here. So just as a bit of a summary, and I did say that I would talk about value and impact actually as well. So there's also a lot of talk about how many contributions do I have to make, and again, yes, you're kind of barking up the wrong tree if that's where you're coming from, to be honest. As a rule of thumb, something once a week is probably starting to get you in the ballpark, but that's not how it's measured. It's not measured on quantity, because if you're doing something every day, but it's having no impact, again, you think about this as, are you doing something that is technical? Are you doing something that is making a contribution to that community? If you're coming along and just kind of writing something every day, but it's not contributing to the technical conversation or contributing to the product. Microsoft is looking here for people who are providing value in whatever that means, and providing impact. So I guess the other thing is, you could be doing the most awesome stuff, but you've also got to get someone to follow it and to notice it. But my experience of this community is that there are people basically with their eyes out all the time looking for, within the MVP community, looking for people who are doing awesome and valuable things and are just like ready, poised to lift you up and to help you make that impact. So if you're doing something that is valuable, if you've done some networking and some people, you kind of know some people and you share it with someone, there are, believe me, enough people there who will go out of their way to share stuff. I've also found sharing other people's stuff when I was on my path, into this. I would share stuff from people who were more prominent than me. I would come along and take content that I thought was amazing and share it with other people, because why not? This is what we do. Mimic the behavior that you want to. Well, it's not even really mimicking, isn't it? Just behave as you want to behave, and behave as those people behave. These are the people providing leadership, sharing, uplifting others. You can just do that. You don't have to be an MVP to do that. Find content that you think is valuable. Tell other people it's valuable. And honestly, if you want to network, if you want to get in and build a network with people, sharing their content and thanking them for their content and raising their content, whatever that is, oh gee, that's a good way to someone's heart, rather than coming along and going, hi Lisa, you don't know me, can you please nominate me for an MVP? Coming along and sharing something that I've made the same way I do for others. I was quite stoked if I shared content from someone who was who I considered famous, and then I remember getting a personal message a couple of times from someone going, wow, thank you for sharing my content. Because in the end, we're all trying to make that impact and add that value. And, pragmatically, if you want to do the networking thing, like I said, join the conversation, share other people's content is one of the quickest and easiest ways to do that. So you do have to be doing, it's not just about, like, if you're bean counting and clock watching, if you're just churning out things and it's not landing anywhere, it's not making any impact, it's not, it's not about quantity, it's really not. Because if, some contributions might be one line on a page, but might represent enormous value, whereas other people will do many smaller things, but in the end it has to be something that represents value. It can't just be about quantity. And as I said earlier, you need to be doing something you love. You need to be doing something that you would do anyway, that is intrinsically motivating for you, that you're going to choose to do on a Sunday, on a 10 o'clock or at night or 5 o'clock in the morning, or whenever you're going to fit it in around the rest of your life. So, don't just, if you've got a bean counter mentality, if you're just like, I have to do this thing every day, or I have to do this thing once a week, and that's not what motivates you. I mean, I know some people do that because that's what motivates them. I do another podcast actually called The Up Podcast with my friend Megan Walker, who you might know. She was a host on an episode here. She does like challenges for herself. Oh, I'm going to set, 30 posts in 30 days. And for her, that's an incredibly motivating thing to do, and a way to kind of get herself deep into something. Honestly, I have enormous respect for that, but I would be sick of myself and resentful of my decision to do that probably about 3 days. I love the idea of it, but it's not me. I need to be doing things that are motivating for me. As I said, I couldn't sit down and do a blog every day for 30 days. I don't think I could sit down and do forum things. Just get to understand yourself, and I'm going to say this again, you do you, right? Whatever is the thing that you're sitting there on a Sunday or you get out of bed and you're like, what's the thing that I really want to be doing? If that is about making presentations, do that. If that is about making videos, do that. If it's writing, do that. If it's answering forum questions, building tools, getting involved in preview programs, that, whatever it is, you do you, do the thing that you would be doing anyway, because it then becomes, if you're already intrinsically motivated to do it, you will keep doing it, and then it becomes its own reward. Gosh, that trophy is lovely to receive, I'm not going to lie to you, but in the end, the activity itself has to be your main motivation, because it's a lot of work and you need to be doing something. That you love. All right, I reckon that might be a good spot to wrap that up. So thank you very much for listening. I hope that different angle on this has been helpful for you. If you would like to connect with me, I'm pretty much all over LinkedIn. Very happy to connect with people on LinkedIn. But please just pop a note in there saying, you heard me on the CRM MVP podcast, so that it's interesting to me, rather than just having random connections. If you've connected with something that I've said here, please drop me a note on LinkedIn to say that. You'll also find me on Twitter. My handle is Lisa M. Crosbie. Crosbie is spelled Crosbie. Have spent my entire life spelling my surname, but again, I'm if you start typing Lisa CR, I'm pretty easy to find on Twitter. It's an unusual enough name. And you'll also find me at theuppodcast.com. That's a podcast that I record once a week, a short podcast with Megan Walker. And if you've got any questions or comments about this episode, please leave us a comment at crmmvppodcast.com. And thank you very much, Gus, for letting me drive and host an episode. And I will be listening to you in future episodes.